I'm now going to turn the podium over to FBI Director Kash Patel.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any. I'll just highlight some of the details in the case and the FBI work, and then you'll hear from the others. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rosier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Cosa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families. And you'll hear more about those details today. The charges and the arrests that were taken down across this country range from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, robbery, illegal gambling. This FBI will leave no room for any perpetrator of crime across this country. You hear a lot about our work of defending the homeland and crushing violent crime. Well, this work is also representative of a colossal portion of the FBI's mandate to keep America safe and to keep our entertainment industry fair and secure. The men and women that are standing up here today worked tireless hours, days, months, and years. And the fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a multi-year investigation. And we could not have done it without our interagency partners that are before us today. The NYPD, HSI, and teams of law enforcement officials from around the country made this day possible. It takes a team to bring this kind of justice, sweeping justice, into the halls of the United States courtrooms, where our brave United States attorney has led this prosecution. It takes courageous prosecutors to stand before you and say, we will not allow this kind of illicit activity to happen, not only at the national sporting level, but also where it hides in La Cosa Nostra. And when these two collided together, they perpetrated a fraud that is historic in terms of not just money, but the scheme and the deceit that they utilize to steal and swindle people from money, to include crypto fraud. This is an operation that showcases to you that under President Trump's administration, there is no room for any type of criminal behavior, be it on the world's largest stage or in the back rooms of tiny parlors where guard games are being played. We are proud to stand here today with the men and women of the FBI and this legal team. And to the United States Attorney, I just want to thank you personally for taking the time to display the work that the media is about to hear about today in detail. As I said, it does take courageous prosecutors, but it takes a courageous United States Attorney to bring this case, because we are going to take heat for it. But we don't shy away in this administration. We don't say no. What we do is we bring the results across the finish line. We bring them to the public. We bring you accountability. And yes, they will have their day in court, and you will hear the evidence through the court system exclusively. We will not deny anyone of due process. And that's the brilliance of this system. That's the brilliance of this administration. Everyone will be held to account.
There we have some breaking news from New York City this morning. Police arrested Portland Trail Blazers coach Chauncey Billups and Miami Heat guard Terry Rosier in connection to separate but related gambling cases. Also charged today, former Cleveland Cavalier guard Damon Jones. Just moments ago, we heard from FBI Director Kash Patel about the charges.
This is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Cosa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families. And you'll hear more about those details today. The charges and the arrests that were taken down across this country range from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, robbery, illegal gambling.
Now let's bring in CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rose. And Jake, thank you for joining us today. These charges, they're not connected, but they are related, right? So we also know some of the suspects have been under investigation for years now. Can you walk us through how we got to this point and exactly what we learned from Patel during that news conference today?
We heard from federal law enforcement officials that this was a years-long investigation, specifically on the illegal poker ring that involves Portland Trail Blazers head coach, NBA Hall of Famer Chauncey Billups, who was a legendary player and clearly got caught up with these four mob families that are involved in this illegal poker ring. Now, what the FBI and the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of New York announced today was that there was an illegal poker ring set up throughout different parts of New York and other parts of the country, in which everything was rigged. They would bring in people who were betting not just tens and thousands of dollars, but potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars per game of poker. What was done to rig those games was surveillance cameras, specialized contacts, they even said, x-ray tables, and other means of which everything about these games will be rigged to make sure that these people lose. Everybody split that money. Everybody from the dealer to other people involved in the games to people who ran the games all had an in on this. That's why there are 30-plus people indicted in that probe. Separately, but connected through Damon Jones, that former Cleveland Cavaliers player, is a different ring of gambling allegations that are made, including Miami Heat guard Terry Rosier. In terms of what those people did, it is specifics about faking injuries and rigging stat lines potentially for these games as people were betting on those games. As part of that, what this ring of 6 people, which is separate from the 30 I just mentioned, were doing was pressuring and threatening players, including Jonte Miller, who was arrested last year for gambling as well by federal law enforcement. There are 5 players on 5 teams were involved. Jonte Miller, the FBI said, was pressured and threatened about his involvement in this to participate in this scheme. As you know, Mugo, gambling is a massive industry. It's exploding, but the people involved in this seem to already be well off. Think about how many millions of dollars people like Chauncey Billups and Terry Rosier make every day operating in the professional National Basketball League. And at the same time, even some of these lower level players are still making a significant amount of money. Now, where this pressure comes in is when you get involved in these rings to keep quiet, right? There's threats of extortion and threats that come with this. Certainly more to come. We're waiting on some of the indictments to be officially unsealed to get specifics, but just a massive, massive day in the history of the National Basketball League and professional sports, as well as this boom of gambling we've seen, and we're waiting on a response from the National Basketball Association and the Commissioner Adam Silver.
Yeah, this is certainly a big deal. So, Jake, we know at least 4 other people connected to Rosier's case already pleaded guilty to charges in connection to gambling. So what is next for all these men?
Well, what we would expect to see in most of these cases, if deals have not already been made for some of these people, what we would see is initial court appearances and potentially arraignments today to plead guilty or not guilty to these charges. For somebody of the stature of Terry Rosier or Chauncey Billups, it's certainly quite possible they would try to fight this, although it seems like when the federal government brings cases like these with 30-plus people involved, 4+ different Cosa Nostra or mob families involved, it certainly seems very likely that this case is almost airtight. The federal government typically, although we've seen a break in precedent in the last 9 months, does not bring massive cases like this unless they think that they can get a conviction, and think about the consequences of that. And again, just the consequences of the NBA season kicking off this week and what this means for the league as a whole, and just the massive amount of dollars that are put every day on every game throughout not just the NBA but professional sports as a whole. It's been a long time since there have been allegations of rigging games in professional sports to this level. level. And we know that the last time, as was pointed out a couple of minutes ago by a sports reporter, the mob was also involved in that. So certainly there are more details to come. What we'll see today or potentially later today into next week are initial appearances by Rosier and Billups, as well as Damon Jones. What happens next remains to be seen, whether they plead guilty to this massive conspiracy ring for stealing money in one hand, extortion, you heard threatening, wire fraud, a number of other charges, all are set to come down on this massive group of people in these two separate indictments.
Oh yeah, and I think you're right, Jake. There's so much more to learn about these charges. Thank you so much for your time today. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Elaine Keano. Elaine, I know you were out there during that press conference. Thank you for making time for us on 24/7. How expansive was the investigation into these gambling rings?
Well, we heard officials talk about this being an extensive investigation that lasted for years. But Mugo, we have been digging into the indictments. And just to give you a sense, there's a lot of paper here. These are the two indictments that were, in fact, unsealed today. And to give you a sense, for instance, when it comes to those poker games that we've been hearing about, the level of sophistication, according to officials, that was used by the people in this indictment, they used machines, according to this indictment, that were secretly altered to conceal technology to read cards in the deck. So they were supposed to be these random shuffling, card shuffling machines, but in fact were actually reading these cards. There was information that was then gathered from those shuffling machines and then sent to an off-site operator. It's like something out of a movie, Mugo, to hear and read about the level of sophistication involved. So you had an operator there that communicated information using cellular phones to someone else on the cheating team, as the indictment says, who was at the poker table, the rigged poker table, according to the indictment, referred to as the quarterback, the driver, using secret signaling to share information with other members of the cheating teams playing in the rigged games. So just think about that. It really truly is like a screenplay or something that you would see in a Hollywood movie. At one point in the indictment, it also talks about playing cards that had markers that were visible only to individuals wearing specially designed contact lenses or sunglasses. So, Mugo, there's a lot more to pour through. We've only just begun, but certainly a lot to digest here after this announcement today.
Yeah, and Elaine, I know that there is, in fact, a lot that you're still going through right now, but do we know why now? Can you tell us more about the timing of this investigation?
Yeah, that's a good question, because in fact, if you look at the dates when these indictments were filed, so October 9th, the indictment that I was just reading from was filed on October 9th, unsealed today. The other indictment that had to do with the sports betting was filed on October 16th. Well, here we are now. That's the very question, in fact, Mugo, that I asked FBI Director Kash Patel. Why move in at this point? He didn't have an answer, didn't want to actually talk about that. What we do know is that officials have said there are continuing investigations, and so we'll see what else is to come, but the timing of this certainly remains an open question at this point.
Oh yeah, definitely. Elaine Keano, thank you so much once again for your reporting. Appreciate your time today.